CX is becoming a new buzzword. Everyone's talking about customer experience, everyone's talking about employee experience, and everyone's talking about, user experience. And then there's user interface. I think, as I said, it's really important to have a strategy. Otherwise, you can get pretty lost in all these buzzwords, and it can become quite overwhelming.
Hello and welcome to a whole new episode of Engati CX. I am your host Drishti, and today we have a technology expert with us on the show. But before I introduce you to our guest, allow me to introduce you to the magic of Engati. Engati is the world's leading multilingual no-code digital CX platform available across 14 channels with 35,000 bots created across 186 countries in every domain and use case. Engati has also been recognized as a top platform by INC.com, Tech World, CIO, and many others. We run the Engati blog, video channel, and the Engati CX podcast, receiving upwards of 400,000 visitors annually. And now for our guest, Gunjan is a CX and marketing leader with senior experience in developing and implementing research-based CX and strategic marketing plans that have driven customer centricity into organizational DNA, changed consumer behavior, boosted sales, brand presence, and operational wins in government, travel, tourism, fresh produce, FMCG, and franchising. She uses data insights and relationships to inform strategies and guide teams to achieve results. Gunjan is a board director and the secretary of the Women in Technology Board Readiness Program. She also won the 2016 Global Air Rail Awards Marketing Campaign of the Year and drove awareness of a redesigned responsive website with Australia's first air rail e-ticketing system. So hi Gunjan, we are really happy to have you on Engati CX.
Hi Trishti, thanks. It's really good to be being interviewed by Engati.
That's great, and that's our pleasure as well. So before we dive into the interview with Gunjan, do not forget to subscribe to Engati and tap the bell icon below to get access to exclusive content from thought leaders around the globe. So Gunjan, can you tell us what makes a successful CX transformation process and what initiatives can someone implement to drive customer centricity in an organization?
I think before I answer that question, I'd like to define what customer experience is and the difference between marketing and customer experience. So for me, marketing or branding is really about setting people's expectations of the kind of experience you would get if you interact with the brand. And customer experience is really delivering on those expectations. So it's about identifying all the touch points that a customer would have with an organization, and then making sure that all those touch points are in sync with one another and are actually delivering on the same experience that your brand and your marketing team have promised. So that's customer experience. So when you talk about customer experience transformation, it really is a holistic approach. It's all of the organization, because your customer will interact with multiple teams and multiple touch points within the organization. So it's really about understanding or transforming the organization in terms of the process, in terms of technology and people. So if you want to go down the path of transforming your customer experience, the first priority really is having a North Star. It's kind of identifying what's the strategy, what is the brand promise, so what is the experience that you want to deliver on, and that kind of sets the tone. You've got to have a strategy of, this is where we want to head down. And then it's really about identifying the processes. So it's about understanding from a customer's viewpoint, what are the most important touch points in a customer's life cycle with your organization. So to give you an example, like if you have a website, if you're an e-commerce business and your entire existence is website, from a customer's point of view, when you start mapping out their journey of buying your product online or on the website, one of the breaking points could be your payment gateway. Like your payment gateway crashes every time that a customer wants to purchase. That's, one of their biggest pain point. Or the pain point could be There's no transparency. They place the order and the order disappears. There's lack of communication. So you've really got to identify the processes from a customer's viewpoint in terms of what's causing them the biggest anxiety. And then you improvise on those processes. And then you come down to your people. You actually can't deliver on a successful customer experience transformation process if you don't have the right mindset. If your people don't have the right behavior, they don't have the right mindset, there is not a customer-centric culture within the organization, it becomes really, really hard. So I think any organization that's heading down customer experience transformation, three things: North Star, identify the North Star, identify important processes from a customer's point of view, and then you put in place enablers to enable that transformation to thrive. And those enablers are really your people, the culture, and also the technology that can enhance the processes. So, I would say that is an important component of having a successful transformation.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. So, how can having a human-centered design approach impact the way organizations solve these customer issues? And what are the key principles of this human-centered design, or HCD?
Yeah, so I guess the importance of having a human-centered design approach is it shifts your mind into walking in the shoes of the customer. Right. And you have to walk in the shoes of the customer to be able to have that transformation that we just talked about from a customer experience perspective. So really, human-centered design approach is all about keeping the customer at the center of everything you do. And the principles of human-centered design is very simple. You converge, so you go out big, and you diverge. It's the double diamond approach. All it talks about is you've got to think big. So you go out, you explore, you talk to your customers, you do your research. So that's the big picture, the big data. And then you come back in, you converge, you analyze that data, you pick out themes, you do cluster mapping to identify what are some of the important needs of your customers and what are some of the problems. And then you converge out again and you think big and you go, okay, how do I solve these customer problems? You go through the process of ideation, thinking, problem solving, and then you converge back again and you go, okay, I've thought big, these are the possible ways that I can solve the problem, but let's come back and let's talk to interdisciplinary teams. So you need to have input from different teams within your organization, and let's look at what's possible. Let's try and merge what the customer wants with with the business goals as well, because it has to match. At the end of the day, businesses are in it for profit. So, a customer might want everything, but it might not be actually possible to deliver on everything. So you've got to deliver on things that matter most to your customer, which will bring the biggest bang for your buck. So that's basically having a human-centered design approach. And with that, as I talked before in the pillars of customer experience transformation, you've got to have the right culture. You've got to have the right mindset. It is about working differently. It is about thinking differently. And it is about doing things differently. So it becomes really important to have initiatives in place that are driving those right cultures and behaviors. And a lot of the times, what I've seen where companies have been successful is their key performance indicators, or whatever you want to call it, your career performance plans that you have in organizations. Those key performance indicators drive the right behavior. So you have performance indicators that encourage people to be customer centric. You have to empower.
Absolutely true. And it is like you can take up digital transformation in your organization, but till the people in the organization do not start adopting and thinking that way, then the digital transformation that you were thinking with the CX strategy perspective will not give that effect till people are not adopting those things. So
Absolutely.
yeah.
Like, absolutely, you've hit the nail on its head. In terms of all digital transformation, or what transformation is change management. You are essentially asking people to change. You're asking them to do the same job, but do it differently. So if you are not people centric, if you don't understand their motivations, their behavior, it's never going to work. You can't put technology before people. You just can't.
Yes, absolutely. So, what kind of methods support these human-centered design?
So we've talked a lot about that. I think the biggest thing that would support a human-centered design approach is having stakeholder buy-in. So you have to have that buy-in right at the top. You've got to have a strategy set right at the top, which is customer-centric. You have to have key performance indicators that are set at the top, which drive those behaviors. It needs to be a top-down approach, and I guess one of the classic ways of having that built into the organization is looking at your people side of the business, is looking at your employee experience. Happy employees is happy customers. It's been proven time and time again. So it's about identifying what culture do you want in your organization, and then hiring the people who have the right culture. I think there needs to be a shift in how organizations think in terms of hard skills versus soft skills. I think it's always easier to train people up in hard skills. You can always train someone up to sell better, or you can train someone up to, do their job better. But you can't change the fabric of what a person is. You can't change who the person is, and who the person is determines the culture of your organization. So if a person is not customer centric, no matter what you do, it's very hard to build that culture. And I think that's the other thing that organizations need to keep in mind, is to go down the path of customer centricity or customer transformation. It doesn't happen overnight. It takes time. So I think we've touched on elements of, what can make human-centered design approach thrive in an organization. I firmly believe it is stakeholder buy-in, a top-down approach, and culture. Culture is so important. And I think the third that I'd like to add would probably be governance. So if you don't have a framework or a governance around your customer experience strategy, it can fall apart, because no one's accountable and no one is responsible. So you've got to have a really strong governance framework in place as well.
That's right. That makes sense. Yeah. So, do you encourage other business across any sector to follow this human-centered design approach as well?
I encourage every business to have the human-centered design approach, and it's something I've tried to build into any organization that I've worked in, be it in the private sector or in the public sector. So a lot of the work that I did when I was heading the marketing and partnerships approach at AirTrain was also very much to do about keeping our customer at the center of everything we did. Whether it was redesigning the website, it was about understanding from a customer's perspective their journey of what makes them buy on the website versus what makes them buy tickets at our train stations. So what's the difference in behavior? And if they're buying on the website, what exactly are they looking for? Which is why we introduced the e-ticket system, because that was one of the things that they were looking for. So I think every business, whether it's B2B or whether you're B2C, you have a customer at the end of the day. So I would encourage every business to be customer centric. I think the question to ask is, how as a leader or as a CEO have you stepped out and interacted with your customer? So you can do very small things like go out and speak to your customer and understand their perspective and what is it that they are experiencing, because at the end of the day the customer's perception is reality, whether you like it or not. It's your reality.
That's absolutely right. It's like people, when they talk about customer experience strategies or transformation, um, they talk about it and they want to go ahead with it. So, but they are not very sure of how they can implement these things. So, what do you think would be a good strategy, or if they want to go about this transformation? So, if there is a roadmap that they can follow to go about this process.
Yeah, so I think the first step is really about understanding your customers and doing that market research or consumer research. So it's identifying who your customers are, what are their needs, what is, and by that I mean setting up personas. So you kind of need to understand. I'll give you an example. So, you look at the airline industry as an example. When you travel, your reason to travel changes depending on, or who you are changes depending on the reason you're traveling. So if you are a business traveler, what you want from the airline is to get to your destination quickly and to make sure you don't miss your meeting probably that you're heading to. If you are a leisure traveler, and you're traveling with as a family, what you're looking for is cheap. You want cheap, you want comfort, and you want to travel with an airline that, if you have kids, is kid friendly. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, don't organizations need to start with really understanding who their customers are and what are their reasons for interacting with you. Once you've understood that and once you've got that information, then it is about mapping out their journey with the organization. So that's where customer journey mapping fits in. So you map out their journey with your organization for, let's say, if you want to improve onboarding, if you want to improve onboarding of your customers, now this is a very B2B scenario that I'm giving, you need to map out that journey of onboarding, and you need to identify what are some of their pain points, where are they finding it painful to interact with you. And then you need to prioritize those pain points depending on what's going to monetize, what's going to bring the biggest bang for buck. That's where the commercial reality fits in versus what the customer needs are. Once you have prioritized that, you then need to use human-centered design thinking to ideate and prototype and hypothesize about some of the solutions that you can implement to improve those pain points. And then you need to close the feedback loop. So I think one of the important things that a lot of organizations probably don't focus on, but now it's becoming a big thing, is voice of the customer. And essentially what voice of the customer is collecting data and insights constantly from your customers to help improve your processes. But then you need to close that feedback loop and you need to go back out to your customers and say, hey guys, this is the change we've made because we noticed it was painful for you, so we've changed it and this is what we've done. Thank you so much for providing that feedback. So it's a very skeleton approach I've given. It can be a lot more complicated, but this is a very basic approach that organizations can use.
That's right. And this actually, the skeleton that you're talking about, this actually talks about the core points where people should be focusing, and then maybe according to their organization, they can create a process focusing on which points they have to prioritize first. But I think that this skeleton is very important, and focusing on that will make the organization successful with their CX strategies, definitely. So Any other thoughts that you would like to share with our audience?
I think one of the CX is becoming a new buzzword. Everyone's talking about customer experience, everyone's talking about employee experience, and everyone's talking about user experience, and then there's user interface. I think, as I said, it's really important to have a strategy. Otherwise, you can get pretty lost in all these buzzwords, and it can become quite overwhelming. So I think having that North Star and starting off with understanding your customers is key.
That's spot on, Gunjan. Thank you so much. So thank you so much for giving us your time and the insights that you have shared along the CX strategies that have been really valuable, and the audience is really going to enjoy this interview.
Thanks, Trishti. Thanks for organizing it.
Thank you so much. So we'll be back with a new episode with a brand new expert soon. So stay tuned and we'll see you around for the next one. Thank you so much, Gunjan. That was wonderful.